This is Charlotte Talks. I'm Mike Collins. On the local news roundup, the city okays $110 million for Major League Soccer. The team is coming. Expect David Tepper and Mayor Lyles to officially announce that on Tuesday morning at 10. For the first time in years, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg School Board has a new chair, and the outgoing chair has some things to say about transparency. BB&T and SunTrust complete their merger and mark their territory by buying their new headquarters building here. The Hearst Tower will take on the Truist brand name. And our homicide count reaches 104 with the murder of a beloved owner of a local sandwich shop. Our roundtable of reporters is ready to detail those and other stories, and seated around this table are Andos Helms, our education reporter, who joins us from the halls of WFAE News. Welcome back.
Good morning.
Jonathan Lowe is a reporter anchor for Spectrum News. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Joe Bruno is a reporter for WSOC TV Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Hey, Mike.
Did you put that on your door? Is that on
Yes.
And Mary C. Curtis is a columnist for Roll Call and a contributor to WCCB TV. Welcome.
Good morning. Thought you forgot about me.
No. We're all save the best for last. We're all on the radio. If that's not enough, you can watch us on Facebook Live. For several months now, it has been apparent that Major League Soccer was David Tepper's to lose. And unlike his football team, Tepper wins. And on Tuesday of this week, he and Mayor Lyles and other unnamed officials, actually next week, will undoubtedly be from the other officials, undoubtedly from the MLS, will make a major announcement. They've already put a permit out for all that area along the Levine
to bring in production trucks.
Yes, no doubt about this, right? It's here. It's coming.
It's coming.
I'm not stepping on a limb only to get stalled
Charlotte
off.
will undoubtedly be the 30th city to get a MLS.
Because
We don't know what the name is yet,
Yeah.
but
Well, outside the purchase price, this deal seemed to be at least partially predicated on enhancements being made to the Bank of America Stadium to make it more suitable for this kind of football. And so on Wednesday, I had Mayor Pro Tem Julie Eiselt on this program, and I pointed out to her that Council's last meeting of the year was scheduled for next Monday, December the 16th, and that on Tuesday, December the 17th, MLS has been saying for weeks they would be making their major announcement. So if Charlotte was going to kick money into this project, that decision had already been made. And so I afforded her the opportunity to tell us on Wednesday if Charlotte was on board. And here's her response.
Well, I can't tell you that. You just said if we were talking
Just
about
us.
I can tell you that if we use money to assist this process, we're not giving a check to a person who's leaving town or could leave town. Tourism funding has to go towards infrastructure that supports tourism. And that's how, if you look at historically how our tourism fund has been used, those are proceeds that come in from hospitality and tourism activities. They go to infrastructure that supports tourism.
So has a decision been made already?
I'm not at the negotiating table.
No, she's not at the negotiating table. That was true. She was sitting around this table.
Joe.
But 90 minutes, maybe it was 90 seconds after she left, the city announced its decision to put in $110 million. I think, Joe, you tweeted about it moments after the show ended. Not only that, but that decision had been made in November. And that's also when they announced that a major announcement was coming next Tuesday at 10 a.m. at the Uptown Mint. Now, why couldn't she have just spilled the beans on Wednesday?
I don't think any of them, Joe, could have spilled the beans, because I'm sure Joe and I know I had this exact conversation offline with another city council member, probably at the same time you were talking to Mayor Pro Tem Eiselt, and it was like, they must have an earwig in there. When they get the question, they all say the same thing. I don't know. What do you think?
The city of Charlotte, I think, was really trying to keep this under wraps.
Yeah.
They did. They kept it
and
under wraps.
They
All
were
of this
almost
happened in
successful
closed
at it, but sources provided me with that letter that Mayor Lyles sent to the MLS commissioner in November 21st, before Thanksgiving. The deal has been done for this. The ink has been dry for a while. Major League Soccer has always been coming to Charlotte.
In that letter, Mayor Lyles told MLS Commissioner Don Garber, quote, "We have a wonderful collaborative relationship with Tepper Sports, that the city's plans include significant and meaningful community benefits that will connect this new franchise to residents across Charlotte, and that the city will work to build out an entertainment district connecting Charlotte Center City and our Gateway District." Now, that's news.
That is.
Has anybody elaborated on that? The Gateway District, is that not the Gateway Center down on West Trade just before you get to the bridge over I-77?
It's in Uptown.
Yeah, it's that area where they're building the new transit center where the
Yep.
streetcar is
Okay.
being built over kind of near the ballpark. And the thinking on that, at least my interpretation of that, is David Tepper has always said he wants to create some sort of entertainment district where people can, go to before and after the games and, just walk to the stadium.
And it'll have connectivity to the light rail, Amtrak, city bus system. All of that will be within that Gateway District.
Did we know any of that before they released that letter?
We knew that David Tepper wanted something like this, but I'm not sure if there even are plans for this. This just might be a
That
goal that
specificity,
the
yeah.
city is working
So the city approved this in a closed meeting, but in order to fully approve it, they have to meet in an open meeting. And their
Correct.
last meeting of the year is this coming Monday night. So they will be talking about this and voting on this. What if somebody says no?
And there will be I was told, a public comment period. So, they're squeezing a lot in before this announcement on Tuesday. At the meeting on Monday, and I'm sure Joe remembers the gentleman, there was one person that got up during public comment and said to the council, I do not, and called out members directly, called out Smudgy, Councilman Mitchell, and one other council member, saying that, the context of his address to them was he doesn't want public funds going to a sports team. He doesn't feel like that is what those taxpayer dollars should be used for. So I wonder if that's going to come up again at this next council meeting.
The situation I would compare this to is kind of like the RNC. When leaders met in closed session, everybody gave a head nod and agreed that they would welcome the Republican National Convention here. But of course, that process wasn't official until it went to a public vote. And the argument you heard from people was, hey, if you back out now after you told the RNC you're in favor of them coming here, that's going to put a stain on Charlotte's reputation. So I imagine that is a similar argument we will hear for these leaders if they try to vote against these incentives.
So the tax dollars that you referred to a moment ago, Jonathan, are coming from the hotel motel tax. Who pays that tax? Is it just people who stay in the hotels, or is it people who go out to eat?
I don't think it's people who go out to eat. I think it's if you come to the city and stay at a hotel, or if you rent a car, you pay into that hospitality.
And what will that $110 million go for?
That $110 million will be spread out. That's the total amount of money that David Tepper will get for the Bank of America Stadium modifications to build that middle tunnel, the new locker rooms, the TV camera setups. And I believe that money will also go toward the Eastland Mall revitalization, where Tepper is going to put the practice facility and MLS headquarters.
Which in that letter, if you notice, they did not call it the Eastland Mall site. It's part of this rebranding that we noticed, at least folks in my newsroom noticed when we were looking at the letter and kind of picking it apart. It's now the Eastland site. And so for people who live in East Charlotte, I grew up in East Charlotte, Eastland Mall is iconic. And at one point it was an anchor of economic vitality in that part of town, and that's why there's been so much fervor behind people that live in that part of town to have something come there. So I just found it interesting. Now they're calling this the Eastland site, but that's presumably where part of those funds will go.
That was also news. That's the first I've heard of anything moving away from Bank of America, except from Stadium, except for the football team going to Rock Hill. The fact that he wants to put the headquarters of the team and with their practice facility at the old Eastland Mall site. Is that a done deal?
That sounds like a done deal as well, because there's going to be a rezoning coming up to rezone part of the Eastland site.
Also a well-kept secret, it seems to me. What does that do to the land out there? Does that take up most of the Eastland Mall site? Will that be the end of all these struggles we've gone through now for about a decade over what to do out there?
I think it will be part of what the master developer, Crossland Southeast, has planned for that site. And they put out a statement yesterday saying that the MLS headquarters, practice facilities, and community fields are compatible with their vision, but they still want to create an entertainment district kind of with shops and homes and
education. It was part of that too. Joe, if you remember, they just rezoned for that charter school that's going to be over there as well.
There's a CMS school that is already open there,
Correct.
the Charlotte East Language Academy.
We have 30 seconds. Will that help revitalize the area?
Yes.
Yeah, most definitely.
Prior to all this occurring, David Tepper's folks filed trademark applications with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office for 8 potential team names. That happened on December the 6th. Those names are Charlotte FC. FC stands for football club. It's a soccer thing. Charlotte Crown FC, Charlotte Fortune FC, Charlotte Monarchs FC, Charlotte Athletic FC, Charlotte Town FC, Charlotte Gliders FC, and All Carolina FC. Any front runners in 5 seconds or less?
I just will say football is Spanish for soccer, so that would be my pick.
Just
It's
football?
authentic. Or no, the first option, Charlotte FC.
Charlotte FC.
I think they all have FC after them.
Okay. Yeah, they do.
I like Charlotte Talks.
FC. Okay, we have to stop talking FC because it's time for FR, fundraising.
I like that.
Accessories are available at Biggs Camera and at BiggsCamera.com. And from Blumenthal Performing Arts, presenting the Very Merry Holiday Special with shows like Riverdance, the SpongeBob Musical, and What the Constitution Means to Me. Parking provided. Info at blumenthalarts.org/verymerry.
Our weekly local news roundup is part of our mission to keep you up on all the news in the Charlotte region. We rely on listeners such as yourself to help fund Charlotte Talks and all the other news and programming you rely on from WFAE. So we would like to have your financial support right now at 704-549-9000 or WFAE.org.
Thank you, Mike. This is the year-end membership campaign. We're hoping to hear from you right now at that phone number with a contribution in any amount. Started this hour of Charlotte Talks looking to raise $1,700. I'm Marshall Terry, and joining me in the studio is Megan Batchelor. Megan, how are we do on that $1,700 goal this hour?
Marshall, at last check, we chipped away a little bit of that goal, and we still have $1,450 to go in the next 42 minutes. Looking to hear from you. The Charlotte Talks local news roundup, a wonderful addition to the weekly broadcast here at WFAE. We have been enjoying having Mike speak with experts, journalists, panelists from all around the region weekly here to tell us what is happening around Charlotte, around the region. If this is of value to you, can you join us as a member of this station? Any contribution, any dollar level makes you a member of WFAE. You will have done your part to keep this service strong here in the region for another year heading into 2020, Marshall, when we know that there is going to be no shortage in news to cover. Can we rely on you? Can you help us out with this goal towards $1,700 in the next 40 minutes? 704-549-9000.
Now, you may detect a bit of urgency in mine and Megan's voices. That is because we have interrupted a good bit of our fund drive this past week to bring you uninterrupted coverage of the impeachment proceedings in Washington. And we are going to do that again here in the next 40 minutes at 10 o'clock. We're going to bring you special live coverage of what's expected to be the vote in the House Judiciary Committee about the articles of impeachment that the president is facing. So that means we need to do a double, triple work right now in bringing in contributions, because we won't be coming to you over the next several hours while that is going on, asking you to do your part. So we really need to do it right now. 704-549-9000. Help us out. Or WFAE.org. A contribution in any amount is going to get you those 4 raffle entries into our Winter Wonder gift card bundle. You can check out all the gift cards that are a part of that at WFAE.org. Lots of thank you gifts on there as well. We need to hear from you right now before we get into this special coverage. 704-549-9000.
Marshall, a special thank you to Carl in Charlotte, stepping up as a member of WFAE. Nicole in Charlotte, one of WFAE's newest members. I'm going to say a very special thank you to Louise in Charlotte. Louise not only increased her monthly sustaining gift, she also made an additional one-time gift to support WFAE, our political coverage. Everything you've heard on WFAE this week, whether it's local, regional, national, international. Louise, thank you for taking that step. Thank you for joining us as a member of WFAE, a sustaining member, and also making an additional gift towards our end-of-year fundraising campaign. You've got your entries into the Winter Wonder gift card bundle. We've got over $3,000 worth of items, of gift certificates around the region. I think there's 20 activity passes to go to the Whitewater Center. We've got $1,000 in gift cards to Lowe's, gift certificates to the Actors Theater of Charlotte, Divine Barrel Brewing, Lunchbox Records, all over the place. Your holiday giving would be taken care of if you won this bundle. 704-549-9000, WFAE.org. The only way to enter, Marshall, is with a contribution to WFAE.
Somebody's going to win it. It might as well be you when we hear from you right now with your contribution in any amount. Think about joining us as a sustaining member of the station where you contribute monthly. Can you afford to do $10 a month to support all of the public radio listening, all of the information that you get from this station, from this particular program, Charlotte Talks? If you can, let's hear from you. 704-549-9000. WFAE.org as we get back into the conversation. The phone line's still open, and you can still make your contribution online. Thanks for your support.
Thank you.
It's Charlotte Talks on listener-funded 90.7 WFAE and 90.3 WFHE. I'm Mike Collins. It's the local news roundup. Ann Doss Helms is here from WFAE News. Mary C. Curtis from WCCB-TV and Roll Call. Joe Bruno is a reporter for WSOC-TV, and Jonathan Lowe is with us, the anchor reporter for Spectrum News. A sad landmark at a Charlotte landmark this week. The city's homicide count reached 104 when Scott Brooks, the co-owner of Brooks Sandwich House in Noda, was shot and killed while opening his restaurant.
I drove by here yesterday morning. I saw the police cars, and I didn't even think that something like this could have happened.
It's rough. It really is. It really is rough. I mean, I know them well. You know, I've been knowing them coming in for years and years and years.
Such a tragic thing that nobody deserves, and especially people that have been so kind to the community.
Scott Brooks was 61 years old and beloved in the community and by his customers, who turned out at a candlelight vigil outside the shop on Tuesday night on North Brevard. Brooks' niece Lauren Brooks Thorpe worked alongside her uncle and said she was blown away by the turnout.
I had always told them, I was like, you guys don't realize how big Brooks is. Like, people love it. People love this little rinky-dink building. They call it the humble building, and it is. My dad and Scott are good men.
Her father, David Brooks, was co-owner of the shop and Scott's twin brother, and David told Channel 9, "My heart is broken, but my spirit is not." Apparently this was a robbery. Did the police have any leads?
They're talking to people. They have some surveillance video, but unfortunately it is dark and it's at a distance, so it is not the most helpful video. But at the moment, they're not releasing it because they want people to continue to talk to them, and they don't want to, impact people's thinking or maybe make people think they saw something that they didn't.
And we know, I was just going to add, Mike, that I was talking to Katie Salt, our reporter who covered this from the beginning on Monday morning. She was telling me that Scott and his brother would trade off on opening the restaurant.
And making the chili.
Right.
Which takes a while.
And
yeah.
You just wonder. Katie was mentioning that some of the people, that there was such a huge turnout, people theorize in those situations when they're just trying to figure out why, in senseless crimes like this, wondering if it's someone who knew their schedule. Like I said, people trying to come up with an answer.
This shooting has resulted in an emotional outpouring, not just from customers and neighbors, though they were all well represented in that effort, but also on Charlotte City Council. A number of members of council spoke about the relationship they had with Scott Brooks, and that included a lengthy remembrance by Councilman Braxton Winston, which ended up in what Charlotte Magazine's Greg LaCour called one of the coldest and nastiest things I've seen in local public meetings in quite a while. I think it bears hearing, that exchange, as Councilmember Ed Driggs interrupts Winston about 4 minutes into his remarks.
I remember it was one of those things that I never really followed up on. We get so much stuff thrown at us all the time. We pass along, hope something happens, and I almost was afraid that I might have let them down.
Mr. Winston, this is an abuse. This is not personal privilege. You are abusing the courtesy of the rest of this chamber. This is not a mayor topic speech that you're making right now. If we all talked like this, we would be in here for over an hour. I would ask you to respect the rest of us and limit your remarks. Thank you. You can make that speech in a lot of places. You have cameras following you around everywhere.
I will make this speech right here, right now. Right here, right now. When's the last time you had a friend murdered? When was the last time you had a friend murdered?
This is not the
When was the last time you had a friend murdered?
Wow. How do you explain that?
If the city council wants to put time limits on talks, they need to do that. And otherwise, I think it's always understood that you are going to hear some and it was taking Braxton Winston a while to get to his point, but he was also clearly emotional.
And what we should also point out is that this recording is just the small piece of what had transpired before. The other council members, Braxton Winston wasn't the first one to speak, and he wasn't the first one to bring up Scott Brooks and what happened at Brooks Sandwich Shop. All of them, Braxton Winston was down the long line. Now, he was the one that took the longest and got kind of moved from just a small memoriam into a personal relationship. And I spoke behind the scenes with a council member that they didn't know that he was friends with Scott Brooks. So if you would have heard the rest of the recording, Councilwoman Dimple Ajmera, then when Councilmember Driggs got up and abruptly walked out, she added to that and said, that was rude. So I think that...
Well, that was my question. My question of how do you explain that was not about Braxton. It was about Ed Driggs.
And he apparently thought that it was a political thing. And I will say that maybe Braxton Winston lost a little bit of his moral high ground because the next day he sent out an email with a huge headline that said Scott Brooks, and it talked about why are there so many murders, the side of Charlotte that's lost hope, housing and opportunity. And then there was a donate button to click through and donate to Braxton Winston's campaign. So...
But to interrupt his speech,
it kind of
storm out. Clearly, Councilman Winston, as well as other members of that council, are grieving the loss of Mr. Brooks. And to interrupt it and to say it's an abuse and he's wasting the chamber's time when it's really just the council members who are at the dais and in the room at that time, it just was not appropriate.
Sounds politically tone deaf, but okay. Kathleen Purvis wrote a lovely piece for the Charlotte Agenda that puts Mr. Brooks and his twin brother and their sandwich shop into the kind of perspective that makes you understand the public emotion connected to this murder. She wrote this for the Charlotte Agenda, and she talks about how this place, the sandwich shop, is one of Charlotte's iconic eateries, up there with the Coffee Cup, Price's Chicken Coop, Mr. K's, that came along before growth and development has begun to change the character of Charlotte, and in this case, before NODA was NODA. It was just North Charlotte. She writes, a place for the working man to go where these brothers made a living off $4.25 chili cheeseburgers for 46 years, since 1973, and who donated land to Habitat, the land that their father bought back in the 50s as an investment in his son's future. And this one, Purvis says, tore the fabric of who we are. So we'll let it stay there.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, though. She brought up some larger cities and said we're getting big city problems. But nowadays, cities like New York have lowering crime rates. And so it's not really a matter of size and what was a small town becoming a big city. It's much more complex than that. So we have to look at that not just as a cost of getting bigger, but looking into a lot of issues we have in Charlotte, from housing, which they're doing something about, the brothers, income inequality, and so forth. So like I said, it's the beginning of a conversation, I believe.
Well, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg School Board has a new chair for the first time in what?
7 years.
7 years. Elyse Dashew is the new chair. She succeeds Mary McCrae, and she was unanimously elected. What can we expect, Ann? You know this woman very well. What can we expect from her leadership? How might it differ from what we've had in the last 7 years?
Well, I think the message of this election and of the selection of a board chair, and Thelma Byers-Bailey, who is a longtime representative, was chosen as the vice chair, is that we're not going to see any big shakeup. I mean, there were candidates who ran who kind of positioned themselves as, I'm going to be a thorn in the side to the others because I think they've done some things wrong, whether it's with transparency, whether it's with leadership. And those guys didn't get elected. So we got Jennifer De La Hara, who is very active with the international community, and we got Lenora Shipp, who is a retired principal educator for a long time. Elyse Dashew was the vice chair, and she was reelected, and she is now the chair. So I think it's kind of there was a lot of talk about teamwork. There was a lot of talk about focusing on the future. This is we're not veering off in a new direction. We're moving forward. And a lot of tributes to Mary McCrae and to Erica Ellis Stewart, who also left the board.
Dashew said that this hard and messy and life-changing work is your legacy, referring to Mary McCrae and Erica Ellis Stewart. Please know that this board is going to carry that legacy forward. Of course, part of that legacy are 4 superintendents who came and went while Mary McCray was the school board chair. You had the opportunity, Ann, to conduct an exit interview with Mary McCray in which she defended the secrecy that shrouded the departure of the last 2 superintendents.
We have to also weigh whatever the opposing side, their attorney, is saying. Now, if either candidates had said, we are not going to resign, we're going to go through with this, then we would have told everything. But you give them the option of how they want to do this. And I think everybody does it that way, in a sense, rather than just going whole hog and exposing everything.
She told you that lots of times, quote, people are not always honest with you. And she was referring, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, to the consulting firms that helped them choose these last several superintendents who were all mysteriously shown the door within 3 years of their hiring. She said those firms had let the board down. Does the board bear no responsibility? It's the consulting firms? Well, fire the board. Just hire the consulting firm. Who needs the school board?
Yeah, and interestingly, because I said, well, what would you do differently? And she said, I think, obviously she won't be making that decision, but she said probably it would be better to go with the North Carolina School Boards Association. Well, they were in the running when the board was looking for a search firm after PROACT brought them Heath Morrison, and that imploded. They brought a whole new round of people. One of them was the North Carolina School Boards Association, but instead they chose McPherson and Jacobson, and they're saying they basically have their own little stable of people, and that's who they're going to show you, and they're going to kind of burnish them up and make them look good.
Is that in the best interest of a consulting firm to put bad candidates before school boards and push them down their throats? That seems to a sure road to bankruptcy and close of business.
You would think so. And PROACT, the one that brought in Heath Morrison, did get into a lot of trouble. And I'm not going to try to recreate that from memory, but they actually had somebody go to jail. So they had some real problems. I guess they saw McPherson and Jacobson as sort of the squeaky clean alternative. They actually offered a 2-year, basically a money-back guarantee. If you lose your superintendent in less than 2 years, we'll do a new search for you. Well, it was just over 2 years when Clayton Wilcox got shown the door, and I don't think they wanted to go back to them for a search.
One of the first acts of this new school board is that they abolished the district's graduation project. What was that, and why was it ended?
It was a project that's been in place for several years. Young adults get passionate about this. It was complicated. It was a lot of work. You had to do a research paper your junior year and then a service project your senior year, and you had to pull it all together into a portfolio and a presentation that you do for a panel of outside community members, which it wasn't that they said this was a bad idea. It was that the state legislature passed a law saying that they would have to reimburse up to $75 for each low-income student for costs that they might have incurred for transportation or materials or whatever. And the board looked at that and said,
can't afford it.
The money and just the administrative challenge of defining who's low income, of collecting receipts, of processing them, they said, we're taking it out of the graduation requirements, but we will try to keep, there were good things about doing in-depth research, about learning to present to outsiders, about bringing community members in to see these young graduates. So they said, we're going to try to find ways to keep that as part of the classwork, but there will no longer be the graduation project.
Meanwhile, the former operator of a Charlotte after-school program was sentenced this week to 5 to 8 years in prison after pleading guilty to 3 counts of felony indecent liberties with a child. The defendant had been in jail since March of 2018. What is he alleged? What did he do, and where did he do it?
Well, he ran an after-school program that was not part of CMS, but it was active in a number of public schools and private schools, and a church apparently hosted these. It was a Spanish language after-school program. It was very popular in a community that has a growing Hispanic population and where people feel like learning Spanish is a good thing. But he was apparently taking very young children, 7 years old-ish, into isolated situations and having sexual contact with them.
He entered what is called an Alford plea. This is the second Alford plea of the week that I know about in Charlotte. This allows you to maintain your innocence. I'm not guilty of these. I'm innocent of these crimes, but you acknowledge that the evidence would lead them to find you guilty. Why is there such a plea? And how does it apply here? You did it or you didn't do it. You're innocent or you're not.
Do we have any legal experts here? I'm not that familiar. I think you could
It's the
maybe be
law.
saying, I still say that kids are lying, but people will believe the
So
children.
meanwhile, we have a minute left. The principal at Community House Middle School, Jamie Brooks, recently received a message from the mother of one of her students whose child had received a threat from an Instagram follower after that child decided to block him. If I'm getting this correctly, it appeared that the threat came from another child, but that is not true, and it gets really complicated to explain this, especially for those who are not social media mavens. Can you explain it?
Yeah, basically you had somebody who had set up an Instagram account. The photo was of a young boy. This Instagram account was not posting any photos, which is usually what you do on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, he was following a lot of young boys who
Lurking.
had privacy. Yes, and he would start
Catfished.
by just, kind of chatting, and then it would be send me a face photo, and then it was send me a photo of your abs, and then it was, send me a photo of you in your underwear.
So this is not just local. This is happening all over the country. The New York Times did a great big article on this. What's the lesson here?
The lesson is that you really need to have this conversation with your kids in the same way that you tell your teenager, if you are out there and you're drunk, you're high, whatever, you don't feel safe, call us. Your safety is first. We might have a talk, but we're not going to yell at you. And what the New York Times really highlighted was how these adults with really bad intentions terrorize kids by playing on their fear that, oh, well, now I've got a picture of you in your underwear or whatever. Now I'm going to share this with your friends. I'm going to embarrass you. I'm going to get you in trouble with your parents. And so they feel like they can't tell. And what worked well at Community House was that they told. The kids went to the parents went to the school put the word out.
Okay, a lot more to talk about as we go through the news roundup. We're going to take a break right now at Charlotte Talks on WFAE.
Comes from WFAE members and Taylor Richards in Congress celebrating their annual Help Clothe the Homeless campaign through Sunday. Bring in gently worn men's and women's clothing to be donated to Crisis Assistance Ministry. Details at trcstyle.com. And from Doctors Making House Calls, 125 clinicians dedicated to providing comprehensive patient-centered care to complex patients in senior communities and private residences throughout the Carolinas. Info at doctorsmakinghousecalls.com.
Local news is our bread and butter here on Charlotte Talks, and through the year, we have brought you the local news roundup with insight from Charlotte journalists every single week. These programs are funded by you, and we'd like you to help keep Charlotte Talks going in 2020 with a call right now, 704-549-9000, or go to WFAE.org.
And when you do give us a call right now, you're going to be helping us reach our hourly goal of $1,700 this hour of Charlotte Talks. I'm Marshall Terry. Thanks for listening to the membership campaign here at the station. In the studio with me right now is Megan Batchelor. Megan, how are we doing on that $1,700?
Good morning, Marshall. $1,150 remain. Marshall, if we had one Charlotte Talks listener step up to the plate at $100 a month, we would knock this goal out of the park. We would stay on track. I want to remind all of our listeners that we have taken several breaks throughout this past week of fundraising. We have taken several breaks and had to pause our fundraising efforts to bring live coverage, over 10 hours on Monday, nearly 15 hours on Thursday of coverage of the impeachment proceedings and that vote. Thank you to everyone who has tuned into WFAE and made us your source for that information. We did have to pause our fundraising efforts. Let's stay on track with your call, your contribution right now, 704-549-9000.
It would be great if you could do $100 a month, but if that's a little more than your budget will allow, how about $850 a month? If you can afford to contribute $850 a month to support your public radio listening habits, we would love to say thank you by sending you the Charlotte Talks coffee mug. We've also got the Public Radio Nerd coffee mug, which can also be yours for the $850 a month level. If you like both and can afford to do $15 a month, then we will send you both of those as well. Becoming a sustaining member of WFAE is a great way to support the station, where you give monthly contributions. Most of our sustaining members give $10 or $20 a month. So think about that as you pick up the phone right now and give us a call at 704-549-9000 or WFAE.org. Of course, a contribution in any amount get you 4 raffle entries into our Winter Wonder gift card bundle. Gift cards from Middle Sea Jazz Club, from Lowe's, from the Whitewater Center, Lunchbox Records, Divine Barrel Brewing, many other great retailers. In there, you can see them all at WFAE.org, where you can go ahead and click on that button that says Contribute or Donate Now and make your contribution.
Michelle and Daniel and Matthews are new members up on the board. They said thank you for your honest and thorough journalism. Shannon in Charlotte, also a new member this morning. Let's hear from you. Can you become a new member? Have you never contributed to public radio before? Can you step up? You're listening to WFAE. You're enjoying the Charlotte Talks local news roundup. Can we hear your support for this programming and all of WFAE's programs? 704-549-9000, WFAE.org. Any contribution, Marshall, any contribution, we will be happy to send you a pocket constitution as our way of saying thank you. Thank you for tuning in for the impeachment coverage this past week. Thank you for being a member.
And of course, as Megan said, we are trying to make up a bit of some lost ground because we interrupted our fundraising to bring you uninterrupted coverage of the impeachment proceedings in Washington. 704-549-9000 helps us get back on track. WFAE.org, the place to make your contribution right now. A contribution in any amount will go a long way, and thanks for your support.
It's the Charlotte Talks local news roundup on WFAE and WFHE. I'm Mike Collins. We're here with Jonathan Lowe, anchor reporter for Spectrum News, Joe Bruno from WSSC TV, Channel 9 Eyewitness News, and Mary C. Curtis, columnist and contributor to Roll Call, and at WCCB TV, and Ann Doss Helms from WFAE News. We've been talking quite a while now about CMPD Chief Kerr Putney's initial retirement plans. He wanted to retire at the end of the year, take 3 months off, come back in the spring, stay as chief through the Republican National Convention. The state shot that down, saying that you cannot take retirement knowing that you intend to come back only to retire again. The city fought it initially, then gave up. So the chief has changed his plans.
I was just trying to do what so many others before me have done, take a break, relax, refocus and re-engage. Still going to relax, but I'm not going to retire to do so.
So what is he going to do?
He's going to stay in his position through the RNC and retire after the convention.
But he's going to relax while he's in his position?
I wonder, is he going to take a leave or something? That always seemed like the obvious solution. If he needs a couple months before he goes into this, surely the city would give it to him.
Well, Panthers quarterback Cam Newton has been out for all but 2 games this season because of this Franck injury, and this week he had surgery on his left foot. He tweeted out or Instagrammed out a photograph of him sitting on what appeared to be the tarmac of an airport next to a private plane, in a parka that had all this fur around his head and a great big boot the size of Nebraska on his foot. So how did it turn out, the surgery?
The surgery went well.
Why are you laughing over there? It turned out?
The surgery went well,
yes.
Yes, Dr. Bruno says it went well.
Quite well.
My extensive knowledge
and
of...
what is the recovery time, Doctor?
6 to 10 weeks, actually. 6 to 10 weeks, it says, before we'll know about his playing ability. And David Tepper, will he wait that long, you think?
To what, make a decision on
there's $19 million at stake here.
We'll see. You're asking me to read his mind with the quarterback. That's a good question. We'll see. He's the greatest quarterback to ever play for the Panthers, and he is very well liked by Tepper and well liked by this community. Okay. And that's the decision that they'll have to make.
And also, there's so many problems with that team. You can't put it on one person. They're going to have to be extensive changes. We see what has happened, with the coach being let go and still the problem. So they're an extensive list of problems that Tepper's going to have to.
It was about 3 weeks ago that the game here when they played the Falcons and just doing a really informal kind of survey, talking to people out at the game. I think the majority of fans are looking forward to, after this surgery, that the Cam will be better, and I think they're viewing this surgery as a second chance, or
Well, hopefully it will be. The lobby at Charlotte Douglas International Airport's being expanded to the tune of $600 million. It's the biggest improvement project in the airport's history, and it's part of something they're calling Destination CLT, the airport's $2.5 billion to $3.1 billion capital investment program to renovate and expand it. It seems that the airport is always expanding, always under construction, so it's difficult to know when one expansion ends and another begins. How will this transform the airport, and what's the timetable?
So 5 years. They started or broke ground on construction on Tuesday, and all I can go to is what the very frank airport director, Brent Cagle, said day before yesterday, I believe, is, this is a quote. He said, as long as Charlotte continues to grow, there will never not be construction out at the airport. But this is probably going to be the most elaborate part of what's been happening out there because it's going to change the front-facing part of the airport, of the terminal. So you're talking new security lines that are going to include biometrics. You're talking about lots of glass, bringing in lots of light, new ticket counters. It's just going to be a complete change. And they're going to keep Queen Charlotte, though.
Yeah, they're going to move it inside.
Correct.
And more ticket counters, correct?
Correct. And,
Correct.
and restaurants, too. A lot of airports have restaurants in their lobbies for people who are waiting to pick people up, or if you're delayed, waiting for your bags. And so that'll be a good addition.
And it's really needed as someone who's in the airport a lot
Yeah,
and
me
goes
too.
around the country. I'll be there this afternoon, actually. We're an American airline hub. We handle incredible amounts of traffic.
And they're
a
trying to
lot
bring in
of-
more airlines.
Yeah,
So this
and
is
a
all
lot
part of that.
A lot of fewer cities that aren't as big and they don't handle as much traffic have much more elaborate, airy, spacious, and organized counters and restaurants and corridors. And it's something that you do notice. So,
But
these
it will be,
renovations, yeah.
for anybody who flies or anybody who goes out there and picks people up, don't think just because the lanes, on the arrival and departure levels, just because that's all done, that the construction is, I can breathe now.
No.
Unfortunately, they've started construction. It's going to take 5 years.
Our slogan is, at least we're better than LaGuardia. Last week, BB&T and SunTrust finalized their merger. This week, they announced they were buying the building, and they are making their headquarters, the building that they are making their headquarters, the Hearst Tower, and they bought it at a record price, $455.5 million. What's that say about the bank? They're serious. They're here to stay. Because it was more money than the Bank of America paid for it when they built it. A lot more money, about twice more money. 2,000 employees will eventually move into this 46-story tower, and they'll be putting the Truist name on the building, a building that Bank of America built and opened in 2002 to give them more space. But then Truist announced that we'd be moving into the building, so Bank of America and Hearst announced that they would be moving out to give them more room. What is this, kumbaya between banks?
I think
building wars. Yeah. Can't be seen in the same building with someone.
Well, no, they can't.
Yeah.
But they are connected by the skywalk.
Right.
All right. The Charlotte Catholic Diocese has been promising to release the names of priests credibly accused of sexual abuse by minors by the end of this year. The list has yet to be released, but this week the pastor of St. Matthew Catholic Church has been placed on leave by the diocese as it investigates a decades-old allegation. What's the accusation? And since this is a decades-old allegation, why is it just now being investigated?
So this came out earlier in the week. It is a report that was made to the diocese here in Charlotte over the weekend, I believe. The next day, Reverend Patrick Haar, who is the Reverend over at St. Matthew Catholic Church down in the Stonecrest area, was placed on administrative leave, which is protocol. This was an allegation made about sexual abuse involving a minor, allegedly happened 25 years ago in Pennsylvania.
Before he was a priest.
Before he entered the ministry.
Right.
So he has been placed on administrative leave. Now, there has been reporting, not by my station, but there has been reporting from some family members. But that's not this has something to do with the family member.
He denies the allegations. Bishop Jugas was quick to point out that it is protocol to put him, as you said, on administrative leave, which does not imply guilt, he said. But this comes 2 weeks after the diocese announced it had uncovered 4 new credible accusations of sexual misconduct against its former second-in-command, Monsignor Mauricio West. And I ask again, why does the Catholic Church get to investigate itself for crimes? Why isn't this all being done by law enforcement and the criminal justice system?
Well, as it relates to Reverend Haar, I know that the police, the allegation was not just taken by this alleged victim to the diocese, but it was also taken to police.
And for the Mauricio West, Monsignor West, those allegations are not criminal. They are sexual misconduct allegations.
That involves an adult rather than a child, right?
But one of the reasons that Charlotte has received so much criticism is that most other dioceses in the country, have made these lists public, and they have dragged their feet. In some places, like Pennsylvania, Mike, the DA actually is the one who's come in and brought the list as public and brought a slew of charges. And so other states, other dioceses, other jurisdictions have been much more proactive.
Now, what's interesting about this whole thing is that Reverend Haar, back in 2018, August of 2018, put out a statement when the Pennsylvania grand jury released that report. He put out a statement which, when we tried to go back earlier this week to screenshot it, we were able to find it, but it was sorry not found on the website. But he put out a statement saying that that report was just another, and I'm paraphrasing, was another reminder of the awful abuse that victims have had to endure.
So I'm being told that WCCB-TV reported it was a nephew with mental health problems making the allegation that you were referring to a minute ago, Jonathan. Good news for radio listeners. Pat McCrory has a double-digit lead in a poll for potential Republican candidates for governor and maybe considering a run. I'm joking. Yeah, I joke, Governor.
You like your shade. You like to throw it.
No, I like him. He's a good guy. The new Civitas poll has him ahead of Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest, 42 to 31% among likely GOP primary voters. Candidates have to file by December 20th. That's just 7 days from now. What are we hearing about this?
Well, Mr. McCrory is saying he will make an announcement next week whether he will run on his radio show.
At 10 o'clock? Right opposite the announcement about the...
But I will say he has he's done this, I think, twice now, saying, I'm going to make a major announcement on my radio show. And the first time it was to say that he was not running for the 9th District. And I think the second time it was to announce
because he's mentioned on his show that he might run for U.S. Senate.
U.S. Senate in 2022, but he also said he might run for governor as well. Right. He's still enjoying a lot of name recognition. I think that Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest should be a little concerned about the poll, considering that he's been preparing to run for this seat for years now. Right. And he has a lot of support of Republicans, and yet Governor McCrory is on top with a double-digit lead.
So this week, Circuit Judge Jocelyn Newman decided to uphold the South Carolina Republican Party's decision not to hold a 2020 presidential primary that keeps Donald Trump's two competitors, Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld and former Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh, off the ballot. In her ruling, she said the law, quote, does not give plaintiffs a legal right to a presidential preference primary, and the court will not substitute its own judgment for that of the General Assembly or the South Carolina GOP. Is it unusual, or is it the normal course of events for political parties to cancel primaries in order to favor the incumbent?
It's not exactly normal, but it's not unusual either. Both parties have done it in the past.
Okay.
And I should mention NCGOP's presidential preference ballot this year only includes President Trump's name as well.
Okay. One of the criticisms by Republicans of the impeachment process that we've been witnessing unfolding is that it is clogging up the halls of Congress to the point where no legislation is being worked on and passed. In truth, a lot of legislation has come out of the House. It's just it gets stopped in the Senate and goes nowhere. And a lot came out this week, which some people in the Democratic Party are saying is hurting the impeachment effort because it's showing that the president is getting things done, in spite of whatever he may be accused of. Among those bills, the Voting Rights Advancement Act, which Republicans have dubbed the Federal Control of Elections Act. What would it do, and why do Democrats believe that it's needed in 30 seconds or less?
Oh, they believe it's needed because after the Supreme Court threw out the preclearance provisions of the Voting Rights Act, they said it's up to Congress. And usually they've re-upped the Voting Rights Act overwhelmingly bipartisan, but now only one Republican voted for this House Act, and which is they're saying you're trying to make it harder for constituencies of Democrats to vote. So now even voting rights is a partisan issue.
Mary C. Curtis from Roll Call on WCCB-TV, Jonathan Lowe, anchor reporter for Spectrum News, and Doss Helms from WFAE News, and the man that CNN's Don Lemon likes, Joe Bruno. He was among 4 judges that put Joe on the Forbes list of 30 under 30, defining and driving the world of news and content.
Woohoo!
And you're
Here,
reporting
here.
on Bladen County, the gift that keeps on giving.
And he's such a good guy, too.
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
yeah.
Thank
You
you.
owe a big
Thank you.
debt to Leslie Dallas.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Thank you all for being here.